Okay, everyone, let's go ahead and get started. All right, we'll go ahead and open with a word of prayer, and I'll ask Brother Gerald if you would offer a word of prayer for open.
Our dear Father in heaven, the great God of Israel, in whom we trust. Our Heavenly Father, we come before your throne of grace at this hour and this evening to ask your blessings upon this gathering here as we are about to indulge ourselves in the study of the apocalypse that you've left for your servants to come to know and understand. We pray that the brothers' efforts will be beneficial for each of us as we look into your apocalyptic message and come to a better feel and understanding for that last message of the Bible. We ask your blessings always upon us and our needs every day, and pray that you will continue to provide those things that we have need of. Remember us especially, Father, in the spiritual blessings that we so desperately need to be able to conform to your will and purpose and to give glory and honor to your great and holy name. Please hear our prayer now as we come unto you in our prayers and thanksgiving in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Brother Gerald. All right. This is our third installment of my class on Revelations, Guideposts Through Time. And I welcome all those who are out in any meeting land listening to us tonight. Very glad that you've come back, and I encourage you all to pass on this class, what's going on, so that we can share it tonight. Brother Walter and I have been working on compiling a email list to make a group mailing for the links that are going to be archived so that you can access them, all the classes, at any time in the future if you want to catch up or if you want to go back and hear something again. So we're trying to put a group emailing together for that. And also, in the event that I can't make it, or maybe Brother Walter can't be here to set things up and things just can't happen, we need to be able to notify everyone so people don't come into town and things like that, and try to get in touch with you as quickly as possible for that. So I'm going to pass this around. Please put your email address and your name by it so he knows who it is. And that will be for Brother Walter to add to the ones we've already got. Okay, so what we want to do, as we've been doing, we want to review a little bit so we can get up a good running start into the new material that will be in tonight. And I find as I'm working on this that it gets more and more exciting as it goes. We're just actually introducing all the characters. Nobody's really doing anything yet. We're just getting familiar with all the sort of like the players in this prophecy and all the components that make it come to life. And hopefully, depending on how the class goes, maybe by the end of the night we'll start into a little more of this interacting that will take place. So real quickly, I won't spend a lot of time on it, but we in chapter 4 we opened this scene up, and there's a lot of components here, as we talked about, and we've been being introduced to each one, and we covered most of them, but we have one major one near the end to look at. But just real quickly, for those who might not have caught last week, this is the first thing that John saw after introduction of the angel approaching him in the first chapter, where it says he was caught up in the Spirit. And this is where he has been, either in his mind or wherever. We don't really know. We know that he's most likely still on the island of Patmos, but this is something that God is playing out in his mind for him to experience. And the first thing we saw in this scene, we talked about a throne, which of course tells us that it is a kingly scene. There's someone sitting here ruling, and we looked at the verse real close, and it said that he that sat was to look upon like a jasper and a sardine stone. And we looked real quickly at those two rocks, and we found out the jasper is spirit, and sardine is the stone for flesh. So we have spirit flesh, leading us to believe that it is Christ who is sitting on this throne, not God himself, which can be very confusing by some of the wording that we'll get into tonight. Then it spoke of a rainbow round about the throne. And we looked at a little bit, of course, the history that's so well known is that, the rainbow appears after a storm is past and is a symbol of promise. And of course, this is one of the elements in it. And we looked even in Ezekiel in his vision that he saw a rainbow, and it said that it was the likeness of the glory of the Lord. So that's what a rainbow, the part it plays. We don't see a whole much of rainbow through Revelation, this book, but it is in this opening scene, and it must have been quite spectacular to be so close. And then the next thing that we looked at was the 24 elders clothed in white with crowns of gold. And we talked about possibly being representative of or type of the 24 priestly orders that David set up so long ago about how Israel would be serviced. And we talked about the 24 elders are symbolic of the royal priesthood of the kingdom age. And those were the exact numbers that they had who took their turns in serving. So they're there. They're important. They mean something. Everything here means something. And then we looked at there were lightnings and thunders and voices. And we thought this was one of the more dynamic things that were taking place that can make the whole scene just a little awesome to behold rather than just a lot of nice things to look at, because every one of us at some point has been frightened by the flash of lightning and the sound of thunder. We know how it moves us. And we looked at how lightning was used. When lightning is mentioned in the Bible, it is in reference to God's awesome majesty or warring nations in his control. And just real quick, probably the best type that's in the Scriptures is when the children of Israel were at Mount Sinai, and he made himself known to them. It says, and it came to pass on the third day in the morning that there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice, all three elements are there, of the trumpet, exceedingly loud, so that all the people that were in the camp trembled. And I suggest to you possibly that John is experiencing that same thing in this as he's trying to take all of this in. Then the next item in here was the 7 lamps of fire that we looked at. It's in Revelation 4:5, and there were 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. And we looked into that a little bit, and it is the complete manifestation of the one Spirit, diversified through the redeemed. And that'll make itself more clear as we go along, because it's very important that we understand where this scene is in time. Is it something that things are going to happen after it, or is it something that everything has happened before it? And it makes a big difference that you understand that, especially as we look at these creatures that are in it and what they represent. Because to me, it's the most complex part of it, and we're going to look at that in just a minute. So the 7 lamps of fire represent God's Spirit in its complete form at work in the earth. And then we looked at the sea of glass that they were all standing on. That would be something to look at in itself, to be literally standing on the water. Because that's what they're doing in this picture. They're standing on the water. But it's like glass, and it's supporting them. Again, you see the laws of physics are not what John is used to seeing here. And that happens all through this book. We looked at how the multitude, the sea through the Scriptures. And when we get it's one thing I wanted to try to remember to tell you. You'll see the sea come up a lot in different aspects, all through Revelations, and it is a subject, one of the sub-subjects that is running always in this. And the sea will come up in the trumpets, and it'll come up in the vials, and how it's used. And when we get to the end, we'll look at how it culminates all together. But that's a long ways off in chapter 21. But we know the verse so well, and there shall be signs in the sun and the moon and in the stars, and upon the earth the stress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring. And we talked about how if they're sitting on a sea of glass, this is probably as close as we could come to what it meant to see a sea of glass. And of course it represents peace on earth. If the nations are no longer turbulent, they must be at peace. And we know that that was the prophecy that was the angel said to the shepherds. Peace on earth, goodwill towards men. It was actually looking forward to this moment in time, is what they were telling them about, that it would come. And of course, it's no longer, in this scene, it is no longer a prophecy, but a reality. So I can tell you, where are we in time? Where is this scene, where has he been transported to in his mind, in the scope of history? That's again part of the structure. Once you get the structure, and as we move back and forth through history, you'll kind of like know where you are. Okay, we're over here, now we're back up here, and then we're back here. Well, that's happening right now. Now, this is where we're going to pick up. That's kind of a real quick catch up there. If you, for those who are watching, when Brother Walter gets the links out, you can go back if you missed it last week, and you can catch up with more detail of those things. We now come to the last component in this picture. It's the 4 living creatures full of eyes. And this is something that, as I work on it every time I come back and have to go over it to give it again, or just to get it back in my head, I see the complexness of it. And this is an evolving thing. He didn't just pick these, let's pick an ox. Hey, maybe a lion would look good. John, what do you think of an eagle? He didn't just set these up and say, look, and they're full of eyes. There's something that's happened here to bring us to the point of why are they full of eyes? Why do they have wings? And why do they have all these different heads? Because at one point, all these heads were on the same body. We're going to look at that in just a moment. We have to go back. And this starts, as best as I can tell, and if somebody knows an earlier point, to me, these 4 living creatures, the symbol starts back in the 4 camps of Israel around the tabernacle. For those who might be listening, who might not have the history, once they came out of Egypt, the children of Israel encamped in the wilderness. There were 12 tribes. And they camped in 4 camps with 3 tribes in each one. And they camped in a square around the tabernacle. And each camp of 3 tribes had a banner or a symbol for that group. And if you look at history, the standard is the word I was grasping for. There were 4 standards of Israel. It was the lion, the ox, the man, and the eagle. And they were all separate. Each one had its own one. Now remember, those are the symbols that we see at the end, and they're all together. But I use the modern word, morphed, so to speak, into something more complex and much bigger. And if we come through time a little bit, come forward to Ezekiel's time, we come to his vision that he had of the cherubims who had multiple wings, 4 wings I believe it was, and each cherubim had a head of an ox, a man, a lion, and an eagle. And they referred to as the 4 living creatures. And the proof of that verse, if I don't get ahead of myself too much, in Ezekiel 1:10, this was in that vision of the wheels within the wheels and everything that he saw. A very complex vision, but each one had these 4 heads on it. It says, as the form of their faces, they had the face of a man, and the 4 of them had the face of a lion, and the 4 of them had the face of, and on the right side, and the 4 of them had the face of an ox, and on the left side, the 4 of them had the face of an eagle. So now we see all of them on one set of shoulders. Before they were spread out around the camp. So we see kind of a changing. They've been brought together in a different way. I haven't studied it. This could be a whole subject on itself. A whole series could be done on this transformation that takes through Scripture. I'm trying to give you just an overview so you can see why they're there. Yes, Brother Jesse?
Yes, the comma placed there indicates that the ox is on the left side. It doesn't say where the face of the eagle is. It says, after saying it's an ox on the left, it says, and the 4 of them had the face of an eagle. It doesn't say where it is.
Okay.
Let's check it out.
All right. Do you know the answer to that?
I think that the eagle was in a different, it wasn't part of the square. I think the eagle was above it or another way.
Okay. I haven't put the time into it because I've been trying to cover this like a stone skipping, but the 4 emblems are there. Okay. Okay, I think it's very possible. Brother, okay. If anybody has, we're all contributing to this. I'm still growing in it. If there's a little something there that you think will make it better, please share. Again, it's not a lecture series. But what we have here, we see these symbols are moving through history, and they're looking towards the future as they culminate and change. And it's a very beautiful study. One day maybe I'll take the time to put more into it. So I will suggest to you, this is my suggestion just from what I'm researched from the brethren who have gone before me, that the lion represents kingship, the ox represents the servant, the man, humanity or human element of it, the eagle, the heavens. I suggest to you, because it flies in the heavens, and as Brother Jesse suggested, it may not have been actually connected to the shoulders. But so that's interesting. It fits better. But you can see Christ in there. You can see that in there. He fits with all of those. So I would suggest to you, again, this is God manifestation, and it's being manifested as time unfolds more and more and more. But that's just where I am right now. But now if we come back to our scene, it says the 4 living creatures, that they're full of eyes. Now before, they weren't full, these things didn't have all these eyes. So something has gotten bigger or more complex and contains more to it than it originally did. So it is transforming through history. I suggest to you, as we talk, we're going to look at eyes in some degree, a little more in the future, but perception and enlightenment, because knowledge comes in and it's where we take things in the most, and enlightenment of understanding. And I would suggest to you that it is enlightenment of a multitude. That's where it's, by this time of where this is in history, things are a lot bigger than they were as just the 12 tribes around the tabernacle in the desert. Things are a lot bigger, and the magnitude is enormous. If we go back again to Ezekiel, it talks about the wings, because in Revelations it really doesn't go into the wings. They had 6 wings, but in Ezekiel we get a hint of what they represented. Why do they have so many wings? Where is that taking us? Well, Ezekiel, in that same vision, he said, and when they went, that was the 4-head cherubims as we saw, I heard the noise of their wings, like the noise of great waters. Now, again, there we see the waters of the multitudes, as the voice of the Almighty. So there we see this is something that has to do with God's voice. The voice of speech as the noise of a host. So we have the noise of God, the noise of a host. Again, here we see that multitudinous Christ. And what came to my mind this past week as I was working on this, what he might have been hearing when he said it was the noise of a host and the noise of great waters, if you've ever had the opportunity, if you're out walking in a field or something, and you startle a flock of birds, and I've walked up on a flock that was beyond countable, probably tens of thousands of starlings. And when they all take off at once, you don't hear each individual one. I heard that one, I heard that one. It is a sound, and it literally sounds like water rushing when they all generate at the same time and fly up. You know the fluttering sound. And it is the noise of a host. It's the noise of all the birds at once. And I would suggest to you that that is what he is trying to explain here. And it's a very beautiful scene when you imagine these fluttering their wings or waving their wings. Imagine thousands upon 10,000s of birds taking off at the same time and what that would sound like. He was, remember, he's comparing it. He's trying to put the words down of what it sounded like and how it affected him as he heard it. So, you're kind of probably already getting this idea. So who do all these eyes and wings belong to on these beasts? What is it? What's the final picture we're trying to put together here? Well, as we go through Scripture, we can get that. If we go to John 11:51 and 52, we read this, "And this spake he, not of himself," this is Caiaphas speaking, "but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus should die for that nation." It's Israel. "And not that nation only, but that he also should gather together in one the children of God that were scattered abroad." It's that gathering together in one, just like that flock of birds. They take off like a unit and sound like a one single thing, when it's really tens of thousands of individuals' voices at one time. In Acts 15:14, Simeon said, "Simeon hath declared how God at the first did visit the Gentiles to take out of them a people for his name." A people for his name. And if you remember back in our opening night about what the word apocalypse meant, where he said this, "For mine eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared before the face of all people, a light to lighten," or apocalypse, "the Gentiles and the glory of your people Israel." What we have here is, this is the enlightened state of the glorified commonwealth of Israel. When I say commonwealth and glorified, that means Jew and Gentile alike. These are the glorified brethren of Christ in their numerical and totality, Jew and Gentile, overseeing the affairs of the kingdom. And that's, when you think about, now rather than just seeing these animals up here with wings and kind of weird looking, all of a sudden you can see, hey, one of those eyes might be me. Because it really is. It's the multitudinous Christ. And it's this transformation that has been taking place through history, right from the very start in Moses' time, when these standards were set, up to this time. So these symbols, everything we see here, everything, are symbols of things accomplished. In other words, our story begins at the ending. What I'm telling you is, we are, from my understanding, and you may see it differently, we are at the end of the millennial reign of Christ, when everything he's about to hand the kingdom up to God. And you might say, well, why would we start there? Well, how many times have we watched, a show on TV or a movie, and at the opening scene, someone's real old and they've been through some situation, or maybe they've been injured and recovered, or maybe they're in some situation, and they start to tell you their story, and next thing you know, the scene changes to the day they were 6 years old and how it all started. Well, the story started at the end, and we see what the finished product was. Well, that's what I suggest to you John is experiencing. The end of the story. And by understanding that, you know where you are in time when we go back and forth. And when this scene comes back, because these creatures and all, they interact with John. And that they're part of some of the things that take place. You can know that at that moment you've come back to the end of the reign of Christ, to a different time, to take him back through history again, to show him something else that's going to happen. And then you go back and forth and back and forth. And I'll help you to understand that more later. But once you understand that structure, it's not so confusing. Because if this is the end of the story, you wonder, well, is this everything beyond the millennial reign of Christ? No, obviously everything has to do with getting to that. And this is the situation of that great and glorious day that we look forward to. And it's no less than 1,000 years from now. You think about that. This scene is no less than 1,000 years away. Hopefully it's no more than 1,000 in one day or one night, if we're lucky. But it might be a little longer than that. So for us to see that and to be part of this. Of course, none of this is real in the sense that these are actual things that exist so much as they are symbols of a situation that will exist and that you can be a part of. So moving forward from there, there's a reaction to all this. And it says, the 24 elders now start to react to the things that are being said. This is where things start to, we've identified all the characters. Now something over here is starting to do something. And a little later you'll see something over here interact. So it starts to come to life. So we've introduced all the players. And it says, when the living creatures give glory and honor and thanks to him that sat on the throne, who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down before him that sat on the throne and worshipped him that lived forever and ever, and cast their crowns before the throne, saying, You are worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for you hast created all things, and for thy pleasure they were created. Now I want to stop right here for a minute. This is where it can be a little confusing, and the theology that exists today might use this. And I'll just take a moment to try to explain it, especially for those who might be watching, who might not be as familiar with it. If we're saying that this is Christ sitting on the throne, then it's saying here that he created all things. Now, we run into a little bit of a theological problem with our understanding of when Christ was born and who he is. And, of course, we don't feel that he is God, but he is the Son of God. So how can we move forward with this? Well, we have to look at some other scriptures to clarify what is happening. And I'll do the best I can without spending too much time on it, because I didn't want this whole class to be about doctrinal teachings. It's about prophecy unfolding through history. But very quickly, in Ephesians 2:10 we read, For we are his workmanship, created in, not by, Christ Jesus, unto good works, which God hath before ordained that we should walk in them. We are created in Jesus Christ. Think about that phrase. I don't think it's referring to the moment that man was created, but we're created as when we come through those waters of baptism and we grow. The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn from the dead, not from creation, over all creation. That's very important that you understand that, but it's another deep subject that could take us several nights in the wrong direction that we don't have time to go in. In Colossians 1:16, he says, For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. They were created for him and for him to do what he's going to do. And that's very important that we understand that he isn't the creator of everything, the universe and everything else. These things were created for him and to do what we're going to see and what he has done. and it is a difficult subject to navigate through sometimes, especially in a very short period of time. But we don't want to get too buried down into that. So moving forward, again, all of this is the kingdom of God in its final glory. Its final glory. Pretty much at the moment before he hands the kingdom up to God. This is, to me, that moment just before that. So, Jesus is now, and this is what we'll start to look at in the next chapter that we're going to read tonight. Jesus has in his possession the 7 sealed scroll that will show how this glorious scene will come to pass. Now, we got all these wonderful things we're looking at, and it's the end of the story. Now, Christ is going to reveal to us how it's all going to come to pass, the journey. And that's where we really get into things, starting in our next chapter, that are really start to come to life and start interacting. So at this time, is there any questions before we move on? Yes. Yeah, the 4 and 20 elders, we talked about how it represented possibly, and it's open for discussion on that, of David picked 24 priests to take their turns, the priesthood over Israel, that it could be symbolic of the 24 or the ecclesiastical hierarchy of the kingdom age, of how things will be carried out ecclesiastically based on that number. But I've heard another viewpoint on it, and I can't remember what it was, but not everybody holds to that. So it's something maybe can be discussed, and I would love to hear anything different on it. So anyway, why don't we're now going to go to Revelations chapter 5, the 7 sealed scroll chapter. This is where it comes in, and I'm going to have Brother Jesse, if he would read that. Let me get a mic on him.
In case somebody can't hear me. And I saw in the right hand of him that sat on the throne a book written within and on the backside, sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, "Who is worthy to open the book and to loose the seals thereof?" And no man in heaven nor in earth, neither under the earth, was able to open the book, neither to look thereon. And I wept much, because no man was found worthy to open and to read the book, neither to look thereon. And one of the elders saith unto me, "Weep not. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, hath prevailed to open the book, and to loose the 7 seals thereof." And I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne and of the 4 beasts, in the midst of the elders, stood a lamb as it had been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent forth into all the earth. And he came and took the book out of the right hand of him that sat upon the throne. And when he had taken the book, the 4 beasts and 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, having every one of them harps and golden vials full of odors, which are the prayers of the saints. And they sung a new song, saying, "Thou art worthy to take the book and to open the seals thereof, for thou wast slain, and hast redeemed us to God by thy blood out of every kindred and tongue and people and nation, and hast made us unto our God kings and priests, and we shall reign on the earth." And I beheld, and I heard the voice of many angels round about the throne, and the beasts and the elders. And the number of them was 10,000 times 10,000, and thousands of thousands, saying with a loud voice, "Worthy is the Lamb that was slain to receive power and riches and wisdom, and strength and honor and glory and blessing." And every creature which is in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and such as are in the sea and all that are in them, heard I saying, "Blessing and honor and glory and power be unto him that sitteth upon the throne, and unto the Lamb forever and ever." And the 4 beasts said, "Amen." And the 24 elders fell down and worshipped him that liveth forever and ever.
Thank you, Brother Jesse. The more you study this, the more each chapter, when you hear it it becomes more of an experience than just an academic study. Because as you can see, John was emotionally moved by the things that he saw. Now, first of all, in case anyone, I've already been called on this, that this is not what the scroll looked like. Because what we have here, this one is physically would not work because it has 7 seals right on the front. You'd have to break every one just to get into it. I recognize that, but I thought it looked very nice about the 7 seals. So I don't have to entertain that one now. So down the road. But we will cover how it did work or possibly work. All right. So Brother Jesse did a very good job of that, and I really like it when it's read with the enthusiasm that he must have been writing. Keep in mind, this isn't just a mundane, oh yeah, and the scrolls, and he opened them, and people shouted, and you can imagine what's coming out of him that he can't possibly show you, what he's feeling. Words can't describe what he just experienced. And I want you to keep that in mind as we see that. That's one reason I set this whole project in motion, is because I believe there's an emotional aspect to it that many times we never get. We don't even begin to appreciate, and we really can't. But I hope to bring that to light. And you may see me get emotional occasionally, because the more you study it, the more connected you come to it. And I encourage you all to do that. So, this next subject, as we just read, and we won't get too far, we're already more than halfway through our class. This next subject arises out of the first scene. Things are starting to happen now. Things are starting to interact. So let's see how it unfolds. The first scene that we saw and looked at all the details represented the kingdom, past, present, and future. We saw that through those beasts as they morphed into the finished product they were, and the sea, how it became what it was, and all the fighting and the lives that have been lost through the ages, the billions of people who died in the wars by the end of the millennial reign of Christ. It's unfathomable that of the number of people who have walked this earth and are gone because of all the turbulence in the seas, the political seas, so to speak. The next scene, Jesus will be given the power to control the nations to the fulfillment of that first scene. If that's not too confusing, we're going to start to see now him take a part to bring it to pass. And from here on, it starts to unfold: one scroll, one seal, one trumpet, and one vial. As they all unfold, we'll see history unfold right up through our time. And it's fascinating. I can't say that enough. He says, now here we go. We start talking about this scroll, about how it might have actually have been made, or what he saw. Of course, we speculate the best we can. And I saw in the right hand of him that sat on the throne a scroll written within and on the back side, sealed with 7 seals. So we have here that it is written on the back side and the outside. Usually a scroll, it's rolled up. All the writing's on the inside. If you've ever seen a scroll, you don't see the writing around the outside. This one does show it around the outside, which I'm glad to. Found. What does that mean? That it was written on the inside and the outside. This is a suggestion that the only one I found on it, and then again, I'm open if there's another one. In 2 Corinthians 7:5, he said, "For within," I believe this was Paul. "For when we were come into Macedonia, our flesh had no rest, but we were troubled on every side. Without were fightings, within were fears." What do you think he meant when he said that? I will suggest to you that he's dealing with the world situation, the fightings without. You remember, there's a lot of the Romans don't like this. Paganism doesn't like this new thing that's going on, this Christianity thing that denies all the other gods. So you're dealing with that aspect of it. Then you're also dealing with the fightings within, like what the ecclesia's problems were having, and we read some of the things that they were going through, and even Paul and Barnabas didn't always get along, which has nothing to do with what's going on out in the world. So I suggest to you that it is what we're going to see in this scroll is those within and without the covenant being looked at, because we're going to look at Rome, which is not in the covenant. When we come through history, we're going to get into France under Napoleon and things of that, and the Germanic people, and of course all of that is outside of the covenant. But then it comes back to those that are within and how they're dealing with it, and the fears, and saying, "How long, O Lord, before this is all over?" So I'm suggesting to you that this scroll, by being written on within and without, deals with both aspects. It's not just about the brethren, but it's about the world that the brethren have to go through and how history is going to unfold. Because a lot of the history we'll look at, especially under the seals, really don't have to do with the brethren so much as what we'll see in Edward Gibbon's historical book, The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. That has nothing to do with the church, but in many ways, although Christianity comes in there and starts changing things, it really was dealing with paganism, so to speak, and all the problems they had, and the Caesars that were killing, the assassinations that took place, has nothing to do really with the hope of Israel, although it does, in that it's being controlled. But we'll look at very little ecclesiastical stuff. We're going to cover a lot of world history that's very important that you understand, and I'll make it as palatable as possible with pictures. That's how I made it palatable for me. So moving forward, he says, "And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, 'Who is worthy to open the scroll and loose the seals thereof?'" So he's kind of throwing out this answer that probably everyone in the room understands except John. But he's going to see the reaction to it, because everyone there, if we're at the end of the kingdom age, that's already understood by all the components in the room and the people that are there. So really, this was for John's sake, I suggest to you, why he would ask a question like that. And it said, "No man in heaven, nor in earth, neither under the earth, was able to open the scroll, neither to look thereon." Now, I'm going to suggest to you that heaven could be the political heavens, or it could be, but it may be the angelic. I'm not 100% sure on that. So I suggest to you that no one, living, dead, or angelic, was worthy to open that scroll of the world as we know it at the time. As far as John could see, suddenly he knew that this scroll contained a massive amount of information that they've been living off of whatever Daniel had given them and the prophets. Remember where Daniel was told to shut up the book and seal it up? I think that John realized this is big. This is really big, and all this knowledge is right here, and nobody can open it. Nobody can open it. So what was his reaction to that? And we'll look at that in just a moment. And we know that a sealed scroll is a symbol of inaccessible knowledge. And we'll come up in another place where a small scroll comes into the picture, and it's not sealed. But he's told not to write what's in it. So Daniel was told to shut it up. It's been sealed from man's mind. So a sealed scroll is inaccessible knowledge, and John was, I think, feeling that we're never going to know. I mean, look, because of his reaction. Because what he said, "I wept much because no man was found worthy to open and to read the scroll, neither to look thereon." So we can imagine it. Now, this wasn't just a quick thing. I think there's a little bit of time going by here that maybe everything he couldn't write down, I don't know. It says he wept much. It's like if you told me there's no man worthy, and then you immediately showed me who was, I wouldn't have had time. I would still been trying to absorb what you just said. But it said he wept much. I suggest to you there's a period of time in here before we move on. I don't know how long, maybe an hour, maybe 15 minutes. Who am I to say? But it was enough for him to dwell upon it. These are the little things in there that show you what John had to deal with as he was taking this in. That he had to go through a weeping period to process that this knowledge may never be revealed to man. And that would be really hard. If we were suddenly under the impression that there's another book of the Bible and you're not going to ever be able to see it. No man on earth is ever going to see it. You would feel a loss. You would feel suddenly that something is gone that you'll never have that might be the difference in life or death. But we know that's not true. This was for John's purpose, for John's sake. God had reserved this knowledge for the interval of time between Christ's departure and his return. And that is what is in this scroll, and we'll see that. It doesn't have really anything to do with history, although you can refer back to a lot of history like we have with Ezekiel, and we'll look at things like that. But really, this has to do with history from this day in John's life, the island of Patmos, to the end of the millennial reign of Christ. And you think about, now we know how long it is. We're talking 3,000 years, 2,900 at least, 2,900, because Christ, as we looked at, right now would be about 100 years old. I think if he really did give this to John 63 years later, in 96 AD, Christ is already 100 years old. So we know that 1,900 years has passed since then. And then there's 1,000 years of the millennial reign of Christ. So you're looking at, John did not know this, but it's 2,900 years of history in this scroll that we now know that it's no less than that. So if Christ came today. So we're nearly 3,000 years of history to learn about that's coming. Of course, he did not know that. Just depends on where you live in time, what you have access to. So, moving forward. Now remember, we've never left this room. And I suggest to you again, if you keep that in mind, that I don't think we ever do. And that's just my speculation, as it never, although it says he was taken here and taken there, everybody seems to be there the whole time this is going on. So keep that in mind now as we move forward. It says, and one of the elders said unto me, weep not, for behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, of the root of David, hath prevailed to open the scroll and loose the 7 seals thereof. The Lion. This is where it gets a little complex, and it took me a while to get my head wrapped around it. I spent many hours with Gerald and some others talking about this, of how to grasp what's happening here and what you're seeing, because it doesn't always fit in the world of reality as we understand it. Of course, nothing in here does. A lot of things don't. 7-headed dragons and things like that, they don't exist in real life. So we've got to understand that this is all through Revelations, not just with these creatures. But it said the Lion of the tribe of Judah had prevailed. And we know that to be Christ, had prevailed. So, we should expect John to see a lion, right? To open the scroll. But what did it say? And this is where it starts to get a little complex. But, all right, the lion didn't open the scroll. It says, and beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne, and we'll look at that phrase in a minute, and of the 4 living creatures, and in the midst of the elders stood a lamb, as it had been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent forth into all the earth. Now there's the 7 spirits now are representative of the eyes on this lamb. Before they were the lamps, now it's like they're being sent forth. They're going out. All right, so we have a lamb that now has been given it. And we can see all these elements of here of Christ, can't we? That had been slain. Now, let's see. And he, that's the Lamb, came and took the scroll out of the right hand of him that sat on the throne. Now, this is where it took me a while, and this is just where I am, and I'm open to hear other viewpoints on it. If Christ is sitting on the throne, and this represented Christ, then who's he taking it from? Something seems a little odd there. Why the Lamb? First, before we get to that, why the Lamb is going to open the scroll and not the Lion? That's interesting. If the Lion of the tribe of Judah was worthy, why is the Lamb the one that's going to open the scroll? It's a little element, something to think about there. But we know that both of those aspects, the Lion and the Lamb, are what Christ is compared to. Oh, is it not? Something that all Christianity has no problem with. I would suggest to you it was the Lamb's state that Christ's worthiness as king was proved. Think about it. It was the Lamb's state that Christ's worthiness as king to be the Lion was proved. And I'm going to suggest to you that it is the Lion phase. These are modern terms. The Lion phase of Christ is handing the scroll to the Lamb phase of Christ. This is where it gets a little complex, but when you think about it, it is the Lamb that went through the trials and the struggles. The Lion is the one sitting on the throne. And we know that Christ is both of those things. We don't have a problem with calling Christ the Lamb, and we don't have a problem with calling him the Lion. So if they're both in a vision, they both have to be Christ. And they're interacting with each other. Think about that. That's where it gets a little difficult sometimes. And I had to put a lot of thought into it, but once I started to see it, you'll see how it smooths it out. This phrase, in the midst of the throne, to me this is an important phrase to understand this. In Revelation 3:21, to him that overcomes, this is what Christ says, to him that overcomes will I grant to sit with me in my throne. Of course, now we don't both physically sit in the same seat. If we sit with Christ in his throne, we don't physically sit in his lap. That doesn't make any sense. But we sit in the capacity of that throne. Even as I also overcame and am set down with my Father in his throne. So he is able to carry out all tasks with the full authority of the throne. And in this verse, he's talking about that we will sit down with him and take those living creatures that are sitting right there, maybe behind John's back as he's looking over here now at the Lamb with these creatures around him, that they are the ones all serving and reigning over the affairs of the earth. So they are all like sitting in the midst of the throne, if that's the best way I know how to put it, so that there's no confusion there of what that means. So Christ is simply, it's both aspects of Christ about, interacting with each other, and really the Lion part of it will kind of go into the background for pretty much the rest of the book. It comes out, I think, a little bit in a couple of places, but not too much, because of where this is going back to. Now, one thing we're going to see a whole lot of in this book are things about horns on these creatures. Horns are symbols of power. We'll see that. They represent power. And we have 7 of them. The eyes are symbol of total perception and knowledge. That spirit to understand and perceive and know. You know how Christ could read their thoughts and things like that, and his knowledge, his ability to take in information and process and make quick judgments and things like all of that is what, however the Spirit works and moves. This has now been bestowed upon Christ when he takes the scroll. I'm suggesting that this Lamb is now being given this ability to go back and make these things come to pass. Now 7 is a numerical symbol of spiritual completeness. And you'll see that because as we go through Scripture, it comes up a lot. There are 7 candlesticks, 7 stars, which we've already looked at, 7 ecclesias, which we've already seen, 7 lamps of fire, 7 spirits of God, 7 seals, which we'll be getting to, 7 trumpets, 7 bowls, and 7 thunders. All of these we're going to see go to their totality, the completeness of it. And even in creation itself, 7 days of creation that we know so well. In Genesis 2, 1 and 2, thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the 7th day the Lord ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had made. The 7th, everything, when we get to all these 7ths and the trumpets and the vials and the seals, the 7th, we're waiting for the 7th of all of those to happen. And the 7 thunders, we don't even know exactly what those are yet, because that's one thing that John was allowed to see but not write down. We'll get up through the 6th and into the 6th, and I think we're in the 6th of all of those, but the 7ths have yet to be done. And I think and that's because it's not complete yet, or Christ would be sitting on the throne ready to give the kingdom up to God. So let's see if we can finish up here. In verses 5, 8 through 12, again, these 24 elders react to what they just saw, this transitioning, this, handing off of this scroll from the lion to the lamb. It says, and when they had taken the scroll, the 4 living creatures and 24 elders fell down before the Lamb. Notice now they're now where their attention now is on the Lamb. They didn't fall before the throne; they fell before the Lamb, having every one of them harps and golden vials full of odors, which are the prayers of the saints. And this is another ongoing thread through Revelations. The prayers of the saints are constantly come up, because all of these punishments that come in these vials and these trumpets and these seals that break forth onto the nations are answers to the prayers of the saints when they say, how long, O Lord? Because it talks about them being under the souls that are under the altar. We'll look at that in some detail. They're waiting for the wrath of God to carry out vengeance upon their deaths. Moving on. It says, and they sung a new song, saying, you are worthy to take the scroll and to open the seals thereof, for you were slain and hast redeemed us to God by thy blood, out of every kindred and tongue and people and nation, and have made us unto our God kings and priests, and we shall reign on earth. So you can see, again, how they're now, the focus is on the Lamb, the stage of this thing. He says, and I beheld and heard a voice. And there's one element in this picture we haven't discussed, and it's all those other faces down the sides there that go on endlessly. And I beheld and heard the voice of many angels round about the throne, and the living creatures, and the elders, and the number of them was 10,000 times 10,000s and thousands of thousands, saying with a loud voice. Now, imagine, we've heard a few hundred people sing, like the Mormon Tabernacle Choir when they sing and things like that. 10,000 times 10,000s and thousands of that. That's a number. What would that sound like? Think about, again, another element that John is taking in to his ears and his eyes. It says, and they were saying, yes.
People will be so far apart. I don't know how the sound would get to one point at the same time. Sound from way far away is going to get there long after the sound from nearby. Something to think about. If you want a coherent song, the laws of physics have to be bent again.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. Good. I'm glad you said that.
Okay.
Yes. Again, the elements are the laws of physics as we know them are different here. It just simply means a multitude, like the birds and all their wings and the noise that they would make. It is something to think about. I hadn't thought about that, but coming from an astronaut, not NASA guy, you know, not an astronaut yet. Anyway, thank you for that. It's interesting. What were they saying? Worthy is the Lamb that was slain to receive power. There's the horns. We'll see how the horns become the powers of the world that come out. But now he's in control of them. And riches and wisdom. There's the eyes, the enlightenment and knowledge that he has to carry these things out. And strength and honor and glory and blessing. And then it goes on to say, and every creature which is in heaven and on earth and under the earth and such are in the sea and all that are in them, heard I saying, blessing and honor and glory and power be unto him. Sits upon the throne and unto the Lamb forever and ever. It's just, imagine that this is a reality. We would love to say this today, but we can't just yet, but we look forward to it. But in this scene, John is seeing that. He is seeing that. Remember where Apostle Paul spoke about words too great to be spoken? Well, John is seeing those things, and he's trying his best to give them to us the best he could, as God gave him to do. But this last line brings to mind a very well-known verse that we know very well. For all the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. And that's something that we look forward to, don't we? But in this scene where John is, that's obsolete. Because now all the earth is filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. It will be, it is. And that's something that we just can't understand. It's hard enough just to walk out into this world, but imagine if every person you approach knew everything and was immortal. Every person that you bumped into was equal unto the angels. What a world that would be. And we don't even know what it's like to bump into one angel, much less a planet filled with them. So, now at this time, and we just got to the end, the Lamb is now commissioned and bestowed with the power and authority to bring it all to pass. So, this is where I will leave you. We are now going on a journey back through time of the events that would unfold to bring us to this glorious day. And next week, our people out in any meeting can't see this, but next week we will. The very first thing he sees is the four horses of the apocalypse, one of the most well-known symbols that even the world is aware of and talks about and tries to speculate. But we will start to actually look at that next week. So if you're interested, as I said a few weeks back, come and see. Any questions? Anybody like to add? Or Brother Gerald? Okay.
Actually, they weren't crowns. The authorized version does this service in translating it.
Oh, really?
And it's from the Greek word Stephans, which were, as we know, were the carnal wreaths, symbolic of victory that the athletes were awarded when they gained a victory in the race. Mm-hmm. So when we think about the Stephans, rather than crowns of gold, it's Stephans of gold. Gold being tried faith, right? Right. And the Stephan is symbolic of the victory that they have gained or achieved, but not of themselves. That's why they laid their Stephans at the feet of the Lamb, to attribute to the Lamb as the means by which they gained the victory over sin and death. So it's the Stephans of gold that they lay at the feet of the Lamb, ascribing to him the means of their victory over sin and death.
Actually, I hadn't looked at it in this verse. I actually touch upon the Stephan in another area of Revelation. And that's good. I'm glad you brought that up, because it does give that little bit of a different perception of what's taking place in that scene as it unfolds, and what John might actually be seeing. And every little piece of information we can add to it makes it more real to us and more enjoyable to consider. So, anyone else? I was told by my wife, if I count to 10, those who are a little shy will speak up. 9, 10. Okay. No shy ones. All right. Well, then I will hopefully see you next week. Thank you for coming.